breaking news and informative talk,
Punch it.
talkerie.com.
Erie. It's Monday, October 28th. Welcome back for another Flagship City Sports Talk brought to you by Quick Fill. Halloween's coming, fellas.
Which is why I'm now on camera.
This is our scare tactic for the morning. We're bringing Rich on camera. If you're listening to the broadcast or the audio version of this, you have no idea what we're talking about. But if you want to see what we're talking about, don't forget we are now part of the Gem City Sports Network. You can always find the streams on YouTube, X, Facebook, anywhere you want, anywhere you're comfortable with. Come, stop, and you'll quickly realize why we're on the radio and not on television.
Amen, brother.
Speaking of the Gem City Sports Podcast Network, not only do we have the whole team here this morning, we got Paul, we got Rich, we also have Isaac Petcash from Erie News Now back with us, part of the Gem City Sports Podcast Network, which we'll talk a little bit about here at the top of the segment. But, fellas, what are your Halloween costumes this year?
Oh, I looked at Rich. I was like, I won't be around for Halloween, so I don't have one. I bought a bag of candy just in case, but that's what I'm going with.
Yeah? Okay. All right.
What you see
I don't
is
know
what
if
you
I have
get.
one either. Sorry, Rich. I didn't mean to cut you off. I've never been a big Halloween guy. My son's going as Pooh Bear this year.
He wins.
I will say that when you don't have a Halloween costume, a friend from high school once told me just pretend you're dressing up as a deranged psychopath because they look like everyone else.
See, those are the people that when they come to my doorstep and they do not have a costume and they're saying trick or treat with the candy and a pillowcase, I kick them out. I won't have that at my house. If you do not show up at my house without a costume on, get out.
Nick, I bet your kids have some of the greatest costumes ever.
Oh, yeah, but that has nothing to do with me. That's my wife. My wife lives... Literally, we were out to dinner yesterday. We went to Permanny's after church, and we were watching the Browns game. And she goes, okay, we need to talk about something serious. And I was like, oh, in public? What's the matter here? And she goes, what are we going to do for Halloween next year? I said, honey, Halloween this year didn't even end yet. We landed on Super Mario Brothers, by the way. But that's a whole other...
Love it.
We'll save that for next year. I get to be Donkey Kong. I'm so excited.
That is great.
I have since college... Fun fact, I have always wanted like a full-body gorilla suit. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. I just thought it would be really fun to have. But they're really expensive.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I'm like, I'm not paying that because I'm not really going to get used to it. You know how many times I could have wore that thing between college and now? And now that it's later, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to get that much use out of it. So I think this is my year. I'm just going to buy a giant Donkey Kong outfit.
The time is now.
Well... we'll see. Anyway, enough about Halloween talk. This is Flagship City Sports Talk. So let's talk some sports. We have a lot to get into today. A lot of football. A lot of, this is kind of like the start of the exciting season for me, right? D10 playoffs are here.
Finally.
We're about midway through the college football season, and NFL trade deadline is coming up. So
Where did October go? That's what I want to know.
we're just getting started here on the sports calendar. So let's start with some D10 stuff. Let's get into the North Shore Rewind. This is the North Shore Rewind brought to you by Duska's Funeral Home. Let's just talk playoffs. I don't want to cut out any games or players from last week. We had a few really good games coming out of last week as well that we'll hit in the 2-minute. And then in Paul's 2-minute drill in the next segment. But what I want to do here is the playoff brackets were released. So I want to go around the horn and just kind of, what are some games that you guys are either excited about coming up this weekend or ones that maybe you're surprised are even happening? Paul, let me go to you first.
That seems like a wink and a nod at me. That's a good question.
Well, there's a reason I threw it to you first.
I am torn between a game in 2A and a game in 3A that I'm most excited to watch. So I'm going to start with that. And I'll start with 3A because that's kind of where I'm at right now. Titusville Fairview is the 4-5 matchup. I think it's going to be incredible. This is the game that was actually supposed to take place this past Friday down in Titusville. Fairview obviously doesn't want to play them two in a row.
Right.
There's really no need for either team to play that game. Titusville lost their senior night, so they're going to play a neutral site game. This game's going to be played at Oil City High School on Friday. I am really looking forward to an angry Titusville team coming out against a Fairview team that I thought, or maybe all of us thought just a few weeks ago, was going to be the higher seed. They've suffered a few injuries on both sides of the ball. They've lost a couple of games in a row, albeit in close fashion. We'll see if that week off helps Fairview. They get any of those players back. And again, I think Titusville is absolutely rolling right now, and they feel a little bit slighted by Fairview not playing that game. The second game I'm looking at over in 2A is Mercyhurst Prep Sharpsville, the 2-3 battle. Mercyhurst Prep at 6-3, Sharpsville at 7-3. A couple of common opponents. Two teams that are absolutely rolling right now. I'll be honest, I'm a little shocked that Mercyhurst got the nod over Sharpsville. Maybe, Isaac, you can fill me in a little bit better on why that took place. I'm favoring Sharpsville just by a tad in that game, although Mercyhurst has that dude, Feliciano, who can go for 300 against anybody. Those are the two games I'm looking to most forward to this weekend.
Well, let's unpack one of those two games, Isaac, because I pick on you all the time about this, so now I get to pick on Paul. Paul, I asked him for one. He gave me two.
Always.
But IP, what sticks out to you in these couple games?
Yeah, I think we'll start with Fairview Titusville and the fact that, as Paul mentioned, they didn't play in week number 10. I think it's two contrasting styles. Titusville loves to play offense, right? They've got a great running game with Coble in the backfield and McDonald sitting there at quarterback. I think the two of them have been really, really tested this season against some great defenses from Mercer County, and they performed. They're one of the higher scoring teams in the region in District 10. And for Fairview, I think their defense has been what's gotten them through, right? We've talked about the multiple shutouts they've had this season. I think the key for the Tigers is going to be making sure that you contain Coble at least to the point where you can give yourselves a chance to win the game, because I don't think there's a lot separating these two teams except they just have different styles. Then you look at the matchup in 2A, Mercyhurst Prep and Sharpsville. I think, Paul, they favor Mercyhurst Prep because of the way that they played down the stretch of the season and the key wins that they had, right? They won 6 of their last 7 games, the win over Seneca, the win over a 3A team in Harbor Creek, and then just convincing wins down the board, including the season-ending 48-21 win over Eisenhower. Sharpsville, though, traditionally has also been a team with a really good defense. So I think for Vinny Feliciano, it's almost like the Jacob Zeitz argument against Cathedral Prep 2 weeks ago. I think if you're Mercyhurst Prep and you're Jeff Root, you have to anticipate that Sharpsville defense is going to key in on Feliciano, so it's going to be up to other guys and other weapons to win them this game. But I think it could probably be, maybe outside of the 6A championship, the closest game of the weekend.
No, I don't. I think you're both right. I think when I think about Mercyhurst Prep, I think it absolutely went because of how they finished the season, right? You talked about it. Sharpsville finished out 2-2. Big win against Mercer, lost to Farrell, lost to Wilmington, and then a win over Punxsutawney last week. But then you have Mercyhurst Prep, who is kind of the opposite. They started out a little slow. Feliciano took a little bit to get running, but then you finish out the season. Home against Union City, you win 47-0. You're at Iroquois, you win 42-6, and you're at Eisenhower and you win 48-21. So I think that's the biggest story when you think of why they were seated over top. I think by the time you had Feliciano there, he went to the D10 playoff committee and said,
make him an offer he can't refuse.
And he made him an offer he can't refuse. And that's why I'm on the other side of this game too, because I'm going Mercyhurst Prep over Sharpsville. Like I said, Mercyhurst Prep found their stride at the end of the season, outscored their opponents by 79 points over their 9 games. I think that offense is heated up. It's not even heating up. And we talk about momentum a lot on this show, and I think they're going to ride that momentum into this game.
It's going to be interesting. Playoffs are when you, as a coaching staff, you have all of the film on the other team, and you got some time to go through it, and you kind of know who the other guy is at this point. You've seen everything they've put on film. You can prepare for all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Most teams aren't going to add new wrinkles, new stuff right at the end of the season,
Yep.
Try things out in the playoffs. And both these teams are almost, I don't want to say mirror images,
Right.
but they're both really close in that we know who the dude is.
Yeah, oh
right?
yeah.
If you're Fairview, bro, stop Covell. Right? If you're Sharpsville, bro, stop Feliciano. The issue is, all right, Covell, Feliciano, they've had great years for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? So we know who to stop. The issue is actually doing it.
Yeah. No, it's going to be tough to see who, I think that's a great way to think about it, is who's going to get the last touch, right? Which running back's going to get the last touch? Both have decent defense. Like you said, Sharpsville's always good on defense. Can Mercyhurst Prep stand up to that defense? And I think this is a great week 1 playoff game.
The week 1 of playoffs is because you have the most teams left. There are the most games still going on. This is the most exciting weekend of the playoffs next to state championship weekend.
Yep.
Keep in mind, guys, really quickly, the 2 games that we're talking about are fresh matchups. What I mean by that is they haven't played each other this year.
Correct.
Some of the other games, whether it's Fort LaBeouf and Corey, whether it's like a Sagertown and Cambridge Springs, where there have been games between the 2 and they've been either lopsided or in the Fort LaBeouf's case, they won. They've seen the stars before.
Yeah.
I've seen the stars for Titusville, Fairview, and then they haven't seen the honor yet in Sharpsville. So
we'll see.
And there's always tough to see if they can get the advantage early on.
Yep. No, I agree with you. I got one more I want to hit when we come back. We got to take a break, though. You're listening to Flagship City Sports Talk, brought to you by Quickfill.
Gasoline at Quickfill. Quickfill, driving America.
Welcome back. I want to sit in the North Shore Rewind, brought to you by Dustin's Funeral Home, a little bit longer because we never have enough time. I always feel like, okay, we're not going to have enough to talk about today. I didn't give us enough to talk about today as we're putting together the rundown. And then you get to the end of the first segment, you're like, I didn't even talk about the other 2 games I wanted to bring up. So I want to at least bring up one more game, and then we're going to jump into the campus corner. But let's stay in the North Shore Rewind for a second, because I want to talk about number 3 Corey going against number 6 Fort LaBeouf at Warren on Friday. And I think this is the game that I am most excited to see. McDowell Erie is another one. We talked about that a lot last week, and we can get into both of these a little bit today. But I want to start with Corey and Fort LaBeouf because this has revenge game narrative all over it. Right? You have Corey losing 19-13 to Fort LaBeouf at home in week 3. One of only 2 losses that Corey had all year, the other against a powerhouse GM team.
Right.
They're averaging 32.4 points a game, and their defense is playing incredibly well, only allowing 15.4 points a game. Fort LaBeouf's still a little banged up. I think Corey is going to come into this game fired up, and they want that revenge game back.
It was a goal line stand back in week 3 that Fort LaBeouf, at the time, who was, you mentioned it, at full strength. They had the full gamut of players available for that game, and it was such a close game, such a good game against Corey out in Waterford. This one's going to be a neutral site game. You said it, Corey coming for revenge. They're the higher seed. They had the better second half of the season. Fort LaBeouf, though, they're no slouch. Coach Blows, he's going to have that team ready and fired up. That'll be another great game.
Yeah. And then I want a quick hit, too. McDowell versus number 1 McDowell versus number 2 Erie. Well, because, that's 6A. But McDowell won this game 28-24 in week 4. They have a record-setting offense with Blaze Myers, James Ziegler, and Stephon Baby Porter. Isaac, is that too much for Erie to overcome this weekend?
Jonathan and I, talked about it a little bit on the Friday podcast and then the Thursday show as well. I think what impresses me the most about Erie has been their defense since they played McDowell, especially in the last 4 games of the season, in winning 4 of their last 5, in essentially pitching shutouts in some and almost shutouts in others. I think Andre Henderson's defense is a lot more disciplined. The big question for me is going to be, can they contain Porter? To your point, he had 3 touchdowns in the second quarter when these two teams met back in September. And I think if Erie can contain him, that's going to be key. I know we're going to preview this more on the Thursday episode on the Gem City Sports Podcast Network. But one thing that I talked to Jonathan about, and he agrees, if you're Erie, I'd be conservative. I'd try to keep myself in this game. Don't try to do anything crazy. If you're within a touchdown going into the fourth quarter, you got a good shot to win. But that's going to be an awesome game over at General McLean. And stay tuned, too, because we have some interesting podcast things in the works for that night.
I don't even know what's going on, but I'm looking forward to that. And again, you can follow along with all the Gem City Sports Network stuff at Gem City SN anywhere on socials, or just look up Gem City Sports Network. Check it out on YouTube as well. A lot of good stuff coming out of there. We're excited to be a part of that as well. Anything else D10 playoff wise before we jump into the Campus Corner?
You hit the other 2 games that I want to talk about, so I'm good.
Yeah, and I like what Isaac said,
I can
too.
complain about 3-7 Slippery Rock making the playoffs, but I'll leave that for another episode.
Well, it's it's about the kids. We don't want to hurt them. All right,
that was a knock on the D10 committee.
Exactly.
Not the fine folks.
No.
Rock,
That came, don't worry. That came. I know what you meant. All right, let's get out of high school. Let's get into the Campus Corner. All right, at Sox Harrison Stadium on Saturday, Gannon scores in the final minute to shock Edinboro 25-21. We talked about this on the pod on Thursday, how big of a game this was, that Gannon needed the win maybe a little more than Edinboro. So, Isaac, you called the game. I'm coming to you first. What was it like being in the booth for this game?
Yeah, 1 second. I'll work on my camera here, and I'll talk about the game via audio. So don't worry if you can hear me.
Well, we can hear you. You're good.
It was such an interesting game because all season long, there we go. Gannon's offense had done nothing all year, right? They had failed to score touchdowns. Jaden Whitaker had failed to get the ball in the end zone. And the big question coming into the game was whether Jaden would even play. I mean, he wasn't listed on the 2 deep. He wasn't listed on anything. And what we saw down the stretch of the game, especially late, was Jaden Whitaker make plays with his legs that we haven't seen him done this year. He had 3 rushing touchdowns. And then to me, the play of the year for Gannon was Whitaker on a second down play, fumbled snap between his legs. He has to go back probably 5 or 6 yards to grab the snap, has 3 defenders bearing down on his neck, somehow evades that and finds Tank Mason all alone, who makes a 46-yard catch, who ended up having the game-winning touchdown. I'll tell you what, guys, like to see Tank Mason be able to make that play was incredible. And for Edinboro's defense, I was surprised. They had bottled up Gannon for the majority of the game, and in the fourth quarter, the Golden Knights offense took off like I haven't seen.
This was crazy, too. When I think about Whitaker and his standout performance, they need to find somebody else other than Whitaker. This is per Gannon's athletic communication office. Whitaker has now been responsible for 12 of Gannon's 14 touchdowns this season, 7 passing, 5 rushing. You got to find some offense somewhere else. Paul, coming to you from the Edinboro side of things, how big of a loss is this for Edinboro this year?
Well, we talked a little bit about it on the Thursday night edition. I thought the biggest person coming into the game who needed the win most was Edinboro head coach Jake Nolf. Yeah. And another good but not good enough performance by Edinboro. Another one possession close loss, and their record now sits at 2-6. They're tied with Gannon. This has kind of been the tale of the season for them. They had those 2 high-profile wins. They get a win against a top 25 Division II team. They get a win against Division I Robert Morris. And then they kind of...
Which become more and more mind-boggling.
Right, sink to the level of their competition, and they play these close games. And more often than not, they're coming out on the losing end. So, this may not be the final nail in the Nolf coffin because of the way the game was played, the way the game finished.
Yeah.
But it certainly doesn't look good. And certainly from a locker room perspective, boy, this one just gut-wrenching because you had it until 26 seconds to play.
And Paul, to your point, you look at the stats, they were relatively even. Isaac Bernard threw 3 touchdowns. He was great in this game. I'm just, again, continue to be surprised at how Edinboro can't close games, and we saw that again on Saturday, but kudos to Gann, and Jaden Whitaker seems to be the real deal even while injured.
Yeah,
I wanted to add one more thing. You asked me the Edinboro side, but I actually kind of thought about this from a Gannon side. That last play, it reminded me of a Nick Saban quote, in high leverage moments, think players, not plays.
Oh, that's good.
And that's exactly what they did. They had their best player, Whitaker, and he threw it to their best receiver, Tank Mason, and that's what you got to do in those moments. So great job by Gannon.
Yep, a lot of football, amazing stuff happening over the weekend, but football is not the only sport being played right now. Paul, let's go to you for the 2-minute drill.
All right. Let's start it. Joe Fergilli of Conneaut ran for a school record 404 yards and 4 touchdowns in a win over Girard. Also went over 2,000 all-purpose yards for the season. Blaze Myers of McDowell threw for 117 yards and 2 touchdowns in a loss, but he became the all-time leading passer in McDowell history. Over to golf. Cora Hers of Fairview, her 4 over par 76 was the lowest round for the Tigers when they won the PIAA Class 2A team tournament by 20 strokes down at Penn State on Saturday. Connor Laird of Cathedral Prep led by his 1 under par 71. The Ramblers received the PIAA runner-up trophy after its Class 2A team tournament, also down at State College. Over to cross country, Camden Kramer from McDowell, the senior, in his final varsity race in northwestern Pennsylvania, won a 3rd straight PIAA Class 3A sub-regional down at Titusville's Ed Meyer Rec Complex. How about some tennis? Paige Patsy of Cathedral Prep won a competitive 7-5, 6-4 victory in the number 1 singles match, which helped the Ramblers sweep District 7 Hampton. Let's see. Andrea Kuzma and Trinity Priestash each scored twice to lead the number 24 Penn State Barron women's soccer team past Carlo 8-0 in AMCC action on Saturday. Over to Gannon. Diddy Peterson led Gannon to a 2nd-place finish at the Kentucky Wesleyan Invitational with a 2 under 142, marking her 5th career win. Gannon finished 3 shots behind Maryville and now sets its sights on the 6th straight PSAC title this spring. Let's go over to the Otters. They went 1-2 this past week, picking up a W on Thursday on the road in Barrie before dropping back-to-back games against Kitchener. 6-2 in Kitchener on Friday and a 4-3 overtime loss in front of the home crowd on Saturday. And finally, guys, I wanted to end with this one. Jim Donovan, the iconic voice of the Cleveland Browns for 25 years, passed away at 68 over the weekend, known for his deep connection with the fans. Donovan left an enduring legacy in Cleveland sports, retired from broadcasting earlier this year to focus on his fight against cancer. I wanted to get Jimmy Donovan in here because I'm not a Browns fan particularly, but I was a play-by-play guy for a long time, and I listened to Jim Donovan for a long time.
Yeah.
This one hurts.
One of the best. I mean, you talk about a guy that is the voice of a team, and that was Donovan.
He was the heart, he was the brain, he was...
Yeah. No, what you're feeling right now is what the entire city is feeling. And I think that win yesterday, and we'll get into the Brown stuff here later on in the show, I think that win was for him as much as Jameis and the team overall.
They had a camera in the radio box of Siciliano and Segura doing the game.
Yeah.
What an emotional press box
at
the end of that one.
And it was Andrew Barry and Stefanski took the Donovan family the game ball after the game. Drove it. Do you see that too?
Unbelievable, man.
Sad stuff coming out of Cleveland. You know, we lost a great one. Before we take our next break, though, I do want to take a second to thank all of our sponsors: Quick Fill, Duskus Funeral Home, Dauber Auto Supply, John's Wildwood Pizza, Denny's Sales and Service. Without them, we wouldn't be here for you. When we get back, T. Frank Carr joins the show. You're listening to Flagship City Sports Talk, brought to you by Quick Fill.
Don't you wish your life
for the afternoon. I'm meteorologist Kelly Rowland with your Erie News Now first warning weather update on Erie's home for breaking news and informative talk, talkerie.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Flagship City Sports Talk, brought to you by Quick Fill. Whew. This has been like the fastest hour.
It gets faster every week.
Every week. We need to bark at the powers to be for an extra hour. See what we can do. But we got a lot more to get to. We're only halfway through the show. We're going to be talking Penn State, and then we're going to get into some Browns talk later on. So, again, if you want to give us a call, give us your, State of the Nittany Lions address and, your Week 8 headlines, give us a call. That's 814-679-1080, 679-1080. But I'm excited for this because we get to bring back a former friend of the show, T. Frank Carr from the Blue White Illustrated. Buddy, welcome back to the show. How you doing, man?
Great. It's good to see you guys. It's good to be back on the show. A lot has happened since the last time we talked.
You ain't kidding.
Yeah, it's a big week for Penn State this week.
What's going on this week?
Listen,
he can't see my face. He can't see my sarcastic face.
He's like, is he serious? Or
I'm always tentative to answer rhetorical questions because I'm like, what did I miss? That was obvious, right?
Frank, I think the biggest question is going to be, if you're coming to the game on Saturday morning, what is the latest time you can arrive home? 4 a.m.? Over under 4 a.m.?
Listen, I've got a tailgate show that goes 3 hours before kickoff. I'm probably going to try to get there by about 6. So it's going to be nuts because it's big noon and it is also game day. And I don't know, something else is happening that day. So, whatever.
Isaac's asking for a friend. He's just trying to, and I'm doing air quotes on the radio. He's trying to figure out what time he needs to get there on Saturday.
I'm debating whether I should leave after the McDowell-Erie game Friday night or just get up early Saturday morning. But
100%. Yeah. You need to drive through the night and you need to be, don't look suspicious. I guess that's the thing is like, don't be in your car hanging out on Atherton Street because you might get flagged.
There's a spot in a State College Walmart parking lot screaming my name.
There you go. Pitch a tent. Before I do want to talk about obviously the upcoming Ohio State game, big game happening this weekend. I want to take a second because T. Frank, we haven't had you on for a while. So let's talk about kind of what is the state of Happy Valley as we sit halfway through the season? What is the, take it whichever way you want to. What's the pulse of the team? What's the pulse of the fan base? How do we feel now being half the way through the season as Nittany Lions?
Well, everyone's mad. That's the number one thing. Just know that, it's Penn State is 7-0. They're going into this game. Everyone's very touchy so far. I wrote an article about, just
it's Monday.
So Penn State's 7 here. Okay, so here's the thing. Let's start with this. I don't want to say it's a virtual lock, but they have put themselves in a very good position to make the college football playoff, win or lose this upcoming weekend because the schedule is very favorable. They've gotten through a lot of the tricky games. That game to start West Virginia on the road. Out of the gate, new offense, new defense. Everyone's unsure of what to expect. Well, they came out and they pretty much dominated that game. The only thing that really changed things was a 2.5-hour delay at halftime. Then they get through the, kind of that sticky game going out to USC. And I know everyone wants to bury USC, and it's fun to pile on the Lincoln Riley.
Sure is.
And losing to Maryland, everyone does it every once in a while. It's kind of like a welcome to the Big Ten sort of thing. But that is still a good football team. That's a good football team that is dangerous that they were able to beat in overtime. And then the maturation and development of Drew Aller, to me, is the story of the season. Now, that gets complicated after this past weekend where
there we go.
He got hurt in a way that is also really hard for me to understand how he's going to play through if it is a lingering injury, because it was to his plant leg, and there's a couple of things that kind of muddy the waters there that I took a look at this weekend, and we got to see kind of the dynamics of the Penn State offense with two different quarterbacks in there. And so that's really the question for this week is who's healthy. I think the right tackle situation directly impacts the conversation of the quarterback. And then how does all of that play together to create a winning formula against Ohio State, who has a very good defense and a very good defensive line?
Yeah. No, sorry. I'm not looking at you funny. we had some tech issues in the studio, but all was loud and clear there too. Paul had some concerns about Aller too, so I'm going to throw it to Paul.
Okay, so yeah, I'm with you 110% on the Aller thing. The USC game was the big boy game, and we talked about that here.
Yep.
I think people are kind of, you said, mad about the first half he had. Although you go back and look at the stats, it wasn't his most outstanding start, but he wasn't abysmal. And the knee injury was something that, he got kind of twisted up. He came out of the locker room in that second half, tried to go, kept the pads on. He had the pads on the rest of the game on the sideline, just didn't feel right like he could go. Bo Prabula did a nice job. But with or without Drew, how crucial do you think Aller's health is to Penn State's chances on Saturday?
So it's a tale of really what we saw in the Wisconsin game. So first off, people are mad at me because I've suggested that there is a clear schematic plan with Bo Prabula under center, and things get a little cloudy when you put Drew Aller back there because he is a pocket passer. He's a transcendent mental processor of the game who has developed into really a clutch quarterback that can extend plays. And you talked about it just there, where in that first half, the honest conversation is Anthony Donko wasn't healthy at right tackle and was giving up pressure early in that game. And Aller was making plays that were, I don't want to use everyone. There's 1,000 different NFL comps for him, but he was just playing out of structure and within structure incredibly well. If he's injured and he can't evade pressure, or if Anthony Donko plays and he's not healthy, or Nolan Rucci plays at right tackle and he's not as good of a pass blocker, I was looking at the stats today. He's given up almost as many pressures as Drew Shelton in half the number of reps so far this year. That becomes an issue of Aller doesn't help in the run game. He does not accentuate or unlock the full Andy Kotelnicki experience in the run game. But that's okay because he generates these dynamic passing plays. He is the quarterback that can take you to the promised land. We saw that he entered that game-winning drive against USC. He was dealing in the first half against Wisconsin. And then I think before we got to see him adjust at halftime, he got injured, but there was a little bit of the pressure was starting to affect his mental processing on a couple of plays there right before halftime. It was an incomplete conversation on that particular part. But Bo Prabula and his running ability unlocked the options in the offense, and putting Rucci in the game, who is a healthy player and a good run blocker, allowed them to run the standard run plays inside and outside of the tackle box. So that really unlocked that, which then unlocked an easier passing game because you drop a safety in the box to play the option, and Bo Prabula can throw the ball into some clean windows. So do you go with that plan? Or do you go with Aller and try and find a way to manufacture the okay run game plus what he can do in the passing game and risk having him be, I don't know if he's a sitting duck. I don't know how healthy he is, going into this week. All those answers Penn State is going to figure out and find out throughout the week, and that's going to inform the game plan and the decision for this Ohio State game. So I just think the waters are kind of muddy right now as to, first off, who's healthy, and then what's the best plan of attack against Ohio State to engineer enough points and yards to get a win in a game where you're the higher ranked team at this point, but maybe still not the favorite.
Yeah.
Frank, I agree with you in the Bo Prabula argument. I think he probably should be starting because of that two-way dynamic ability that he has. I want to talk, though, about Ohio State's offense because I think as much as there's concern in Happy Valley with an undefeated record, you can make the argument for Ohio State that they have not played to the level of what they expect to be, especially in that win against Nebraska where they had to pull it out late with a late touchdown drive. But for Penn State's defense, right, the big question every time they play the Buckeyes to me is, they can contain the stars, whether it's Marvin Harrison Jr., whether it may be Jeremiah Smith this year. But Ohio State can run the football effectively, and they've got weapons. What do you think has to be the game plan for this Tom Allen defense to be able to contain the Buckeyes, knowing that in games where James Franklin has played this team close, it has come down to those final two drives, and most of the time the defense hasn't been able to get off the field?
So there's a couple of things that I think are interesting that are different this year in that I think Penn State has taken this 1-0 mentality conversation and they're not sticking to it so strictly and so ardently that each game is the same. I have noticed, at least at times, they have deployed different things against the team before USC when they do things against UCLA that we expect to see then maybe against USC, Or this past weekend, what they did is they deployed a 5-man front with Abdul Carter at honest to God middle linebacker and 2 outside linebackers, which I was just digging into the film before coming on the show today about the Ohio State offense. Some of the things Nebraska did with an odd front frustrated that run game early in the first half. Now, I don't know how the story ends yet because I was doing a whole bunch of stuff. I have not seen that game. So a lot of people were watching that game before the Penn State game. I was out raking leaves because it was the only time I've had in the last 7 weeks to do anything outside. So, like, I
watch Ohio State do yard work. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. For the football guy who spent literally 12 hours yesterday grinding film to not watch the Ohio State game on Saturday seems weird, but I'm a weird dude. So just going through that game, like, I do think there are things that Penn State can do to slow down that run game, and then it becomes one of the things I noticed immediately was that the left tackle for Ohio State was on the ground 3 times in the first 7 plays in pass protection. So, the pressure and the issues in coverage, I guess to me, the question is, how does Penn State cover those receivers? Because they like to play man coverage. And you've seen so far this year, Ohio State can be inconsistent at times. And I think that Will Howard is a good college quarterback, but he's not to the level of the guys we've seen previously. But it takes just one mistake and Ohio State can go 70 in a lot of different ways. They still have that threat on the outside and in the run game. Sure. So it just comes down to Penn State playing up to the level of their ability for 60 minutes, which we saw them do against Wisconsin. I think, to me, that was a complete game. I know some fans were frustrated with some of the stuff that happened in the first half. They went 3 and out 3 times in the first drive. They just didn't convert on third down. And then in the second half, they started getting the probability started getting in their favor, where they were able to generate those 3 and outs, those dominant reps, on third down. Yeah. And so that was one of the most complete games they played on defense this year. I think that's the right time for them to be hitting and clicking on all cylinders heading into this week.
Well, and that's what they need to do if going into this week against Ohio State, because this has been a tale of 2 halves all year. If they could learn how to play the first half like they play the second half, they got a pretty good shot of winning this game. Either way you look at it, big game coming in up this weekend. T. Frank, maybe we'll bring you back next week so we can recap whatever happened in Happy Valley.
Sounds good. I'll be here if you need me.
Awesome. Thanks, man. We appreciate you joining the show. Have a great week. You got a busy week ahead of you. We're going to watch from afar.
Yeah, I'm getting the coffee. I'm jittery already. I've had so much coffee.
There you go. Take care, man. All right, guys, we got to take a break, but when we get back, we're talking some NFL headlines. You're listening to Flagship City Sports Talk, brought to you by Quick Fill.
When you're
committed to the community and families of Erie for generations.
Welcome back. You're listening to Flagship City Sports Talk, brought to you by Quick Fill. Man, I could talk to T. Frank all day.
He is so good. I wish, we could do a whole hour with him.
I hope he was serious.
I just want to call him as a Penn State fan and just ask him questions. I really do.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that you're allowed to ask him questions anymore. Coming in hot with your sarcasm.
Once he gets to know my personality, I feel like he'll open up a little bit more. But, such a good interview. Can't wait to talk to him again.
No, absolutely. Huge game. Speaking of huge games, we got a lot to talk about from the NFL side of things. And we're going to talk Bills and Browns, and then we're going to preview the Steelers for tonight. So let me just get the Bills out of the way, because the Browns, there's a lot we need to unpack for the Browns, okay? Here's my headline for the Bills, and we're moving on. They are who we thought they were. They flew out to Seattle. Yeah. They had a great two-way game. James Cook was playing out of his mind yesterday. Allen did throw his first interception of the year, so maybe some concerns there. I'm just kidding. There's not really any concerns there. This team looks like the hottest team in the AFC right now, and I don't think you can argue that.
I don't disagree. And Miami has to travel to Buffalo next week. I'm not looking forward to it.
4-game division lead through week 8. That's almost unheard. I mean, they could rest their starters for 4 weeks and be fine.
And the division looks terrible. I mean, even with Tua coming back, they didn't look great. I get he's got some rust to knock off maybe, and you had the Patriots beating the Jets.
But they just fell apart. But the Bills are the Dolphins' big brother. I see. Until that changes, I don't anticipate it changing.
Could you imagine being sports talk radio in New York right now talking about the Jets? Oh my gosh. Oof. We'd have some callers for that one. What's that?
Imagine being a Jets fan.
No thanks. I'm good.
I know.
I'd rather be a Browns fan. I'd rather be a Browns fan. All right, putting a bow on the Bills, let's jump to the Browns. If you want to talk about the Browns or Steelers, give us a call, 814-679-1080, 814-679-1080. Okay, here is my...
Before you start this, can I compliment Isaac on his unwavering faith and ultimate belief when he predicted the Browns win on Thursday night?
I guess you can.
I'm just saying.
I was waiting for him to say it.
I will be judicious with my excitement over that.
Yeah, but I can see your face, and there's no judicious about that smile you got on your face right now. For those that missed it.
It's very funny. So Wayne Bradford owes me a dozen wings from a prediction round last week, and maybe the panel owes me one this week. So
I think that's fair.
You earned that one, buddy, for sure.
I think that's fair. If you missed it on the Thursday night show, we all picked the Ravens over the Browns, except for Isaac, and we all made fun of him for a long time about it. But he gets the last laugh in this one. Here's my headline for Browns versus Ravens. Hi, my name is what? My name is who? My name is Jameis Winston. This game was Jameis Winston putting the team on his back with just 59 seconds remaining. Winston connected with Cedric Tillman on a 38-yard touchdown pass, lifting Cleveland to a shocking 29-24 victory over Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday, ending their 5-game losing streak. Jameis, I said this on Sunday. I tweeted it out, and I said it in the group text. The NFL is just better when Jameis Winston is a starting quarterback. Here is Jameis in a pregame interview on CBS. And that's what you get with Jameis Winston is unwavering faith, ultimate belief. This guy will just chuck the ball around with absolutely no regard to any defensive backs. There were a couple plays in this game that should have been interceptions.
That's the Jameis Winston experience.
100%. So then we'll kind of come back to Jameis here in a second, but I could listen to Jameis Winston pregame, postgame interviews all day. So he quotes two great philosophers in this game, right? That clip there, quoting King David and scripture from the Bible, and then in his post game, he gets to quote another great philosopher. You better. Jameis Winston pulls out the Eminem, you better. Like, Okay, I might become a Browns fan if they keep Winston rolling.
We talked about this off air. Jameis Winston has been like this since Florida State. Like
this is who he is.
I was going to say, you cannot fake for that long that personality. This dude is as genuine as it gets, and he makes me want to go to church. Like anytime I listen to him, game's coming on soon, but I feel like I have to repent or something.
Yes,
because that dude is so passionate, so genuine. His message is constantly just so powerful.
Yeah.
Man, what a guy. Boy, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that locker room.
Well, and jokes aside, like it's easy to poke fun at Jameis because the guy's just a character.
It is,
you know.
But when he throws for 334 yards and 3 touchdowns and they score a season-high 29 points, what is there to make fun of?
You can see the confidence in his face and you can hear it in his voice that, like, he knows that he might throw 3 interceptions and he knows he might throw 3 touchdowns. But you know what? He doesn't care. He's Jameis. He's going to go out and ball out and win. And, I mean, this was a bad Ravens defense, pass defense. And this is kind of what Isaac was talking about on the Thursday show, is that this was the opportunity for Cleveland to win this game, was going up against that, I think they're the number 32nd ranked pass defense. You lose your top 2 corners. This had Jameis Winston revenge game all over it, and Isaac was the only one to see it. So I guess here's where I want to the question I want to ask is, if you're Cleveland, how do you play the rest of this season? Isaac, I'll go to you first. Do you keep riding Jameis and try to win, or do you try to move Jameis now that you have some hype to start rebuilding for next year?
No, you play him. Are you kidding me? I mean, my headline was going to be, and I think this transforms well, it was going to be David Njoku-esque. I was going to say, Browns management, joke's on you. Jimmy Haslam cost Cleveland a playoff spot.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw yesterday, and this was part of the reason they made the prediction, that the Browns with a competent quarterback have a top 10 roster in football. And I think you saw the complementary way they played around each other. The run game got going for the most part. Nick Chubb had some good carries. Jerome Ford came in. Dante Freeman came in and spelled them. And I think we're able to get some catches in the passing game. Jameis Winston, like Joe Flacco last year, unlocks David Njoku. We see a couple of other receivers, whether it's Elijah Moore, make a couple of big catches. Jerry Jeudy had 2 first-down catches. Like, this Browns team with a guy who can move the ball down the field has the ability to, A, score points, and then, B, it takes pressure off the defense. So, you know, I don't know if 2-6 is going to be – it's probably too high of a mountain to climb to get back into the postseason, but you got to play the guy because, in my view, I think for Jameis, this is an audition for him to be the starting quarterback next season. Right, realistically, I think.
Oh yeah, I agree.
You know, if you can revive your career in Cleveland, like maybe a Sam Darnold in Minnesota, and the Browns have a cheap option going into next year, you need a cheap option at quarterback. And I think for Jameis, it's an audition and a chance for the Browns to see what they have with him for the rest of the season, so that maybe he's the starter going into 2025.
Yeah.
I want to answer your question. Should they continue with Jameis in order to give themselves the best chance to win games? And I want to answer you with a quote from another great personality from the NFL, Herm Edwards. And Isaac will know this one. Hello, you play to win the game. And Jameis Winston gives you the best chance to win the game.
Yeah.
I also want to point out Cedric Tillman has been tremendous the last 2 weeks since the trading of Cooper. 7 receptions on 9 targets, 99 yards, and 2 touchdowns to lead the Browns. Tillman has maybe, even more so than Jameis Winston, made the most of his opportunity since being inserted into the starting lineup.
Yeah, and Elijah Moore, too, had his best game as a Brown. I mean, led the team in targets. It's the offense was absolutely unlocked. So I don't disagree with either one of you. I was playing devil's advocate there a little bit, but they're 1 game behind Cincinnati in the AFC North. They now have a tiebreaker against Baltimore.
Yep.
It's a long shot for them to make the playoffs, but I think
I don't think they make the playoffs in the loaded AFC. They'd have to win out, and they'd have to have a lot of help. 6
but
wins?
again, keep in mind the parity, right? and the teams that are climbing to the top are going to be the division winners. But then you look at wild card berths, and outside of the AFC North, my question is, do you really have a standout team that's going to get there? Are the Chargers really that team? There's nobody in the AFC East. Maybe the Colts get in if Anthony Richardson. So again, you don't know. And I think it would be silly for Cleveland to bench Jameis for a high draft pick, knowing that he could be your starter next season if he plays well.
Agreed.
Cleveland is probably sitting in second place in the AFC East. That's kind of tough to look at. But I agree. Chargers, Raiders, Broncos are looking great. Looking at the AFC South, Anthony Richardson can't make it through an entire game without taking a break. There are
They should go to Flacco before the end of the season.
Outside of the top teams, Texans, Steelers, Ravens, Chiefs, Bills, there is an opportunity for them, I think, to squeak in a wild card. Can you imagine?
In their division.
Can you imagine Cleveland Sports Talk Radio if Jameis takes them to the wild card?
Well, and think about this for a second, too, guys. I mean, I think for Browns fans and maybe Browns management behind closed doors, it's a gift from God. They passed on Flacco last year after he came in and played really, really well. Maybe this is their chance to do it again and not make the same mistake.
Listen, I'm here for it. I want to see what he does. I am a Jameis Winston fan. I love the guy's character. I love the guy's passion. I don't like the Browns, but we'll see how it goes. Erie, thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Nick Artman. I'm signing off for Paul Adamzak, Rich Smith, and Isaac Petcash. That's it. We're done. Go watch the Steelers game tonight. Have some fun.
The Jefferson